Okay. Thank you. This is the second time I'm giving this talk, but hopefully it will be a little bit smoother than the last time, because that was totally different than here. There's a lot more people. Thank you for coming. I hope you will find this interesting. So my talk is called Bringing Life 2D. It's a very bad pun, I'm sorry. I couldn't help myself. This talk is basically about my portrait work in the game that I made, and why I think games need to animate their 2D artwork more. First of all, I'm a 2D artist. I just grew up drawing, and eventually it became my career. Not really planned, but that's how it went. I'm also the co-founder and the art director at Wispfire, which is a small indie studio that I set up together with my friends from college. So I also meddle with game design. I do the production art, graphic design, UI, whatever visual stuff needs to be done in the game, except for 3D. And I also do everything else that needs to be done, like dragging every single audio file into the dialogue editor, which was a lot of fun. These are some examples of my 2D work. So I really love very vibrant, expressive characters. I'm very inspired by animation. So the game I made is called Herald, an interactive period drama. It's, as its title suggests, it's a costume drama. So it takes place in the 19th century. You walk around in a 3D space, and the text is displayed on a panel, on a UI panel, and then there's a 2D character inspired by visual novels. So most of all, Herald is a story-driven game. It's character-driven, and it's about empathy and connecting with people and talking to people. Because we were a very small studio, we really wanted to play to our strengths. And because I was the artist, I was very good at lively 2D character art. We decided to focus on 2D character portraits. Other strengths were making thoughtful narratives, so we focused on making a story-driven game, and storytelling through environment, so that's why we really wanted the 3D space. But we always wanted the focus to be on the 2D art for the characters. So this is what we came up with. So most of all, it's a character drama, and for me, as the artist, it was the question like, how are we going to have the players relate to these characters? When I first started, I started just with the basic static portrait. This is actually how still a lot of visual novels do it. They have different expressions, and they swap them, and then they have maybe like a simple blinking animation to give it slightly more life. It worked, but it wasn't very special. So around the time when I started making these portraits, I stumbled upon this trend that was happening at the time on Tumblr, which was people just animating their 2D characters. I was very intrigued, so I looked it up, and it was this Japanese software package called Emote or Emo Fury. And basically what you could do is draw your character in different layers, so like hair, eyes, mouth, everything separate. And you load it in this program, and it would just animate standard animations. But the downside was that everything was in Japanese, so I had no idea what to do, but there were tutorials. But I wanted to do it, but it was really difficult because of the barrier, the language barrier. But upon further research, I found another program. This is a different slide than I expected. Anyway, this is mostly what I saw from those programs, right? Very simplified anime characters. So I wasn't really sure if it was going to work with my style, because it's more Western and more painted, much more difficult lines in the face. But I was really interested in trying it, so I tried this program, which was also a Japanese software package, but it was just translated to English, which was a huge bonus, even though the tutorials were all Google translated, so it was still quite awkward to use at that time. So basically what it allowed you to do, as I said, you can draw a character, and you separate every different element that has to move or animate into different layers. And nowadays, you can just load in a PSD with all the different layers, but when I started, you had to make your own texture space. So as you see here, like every element has its own spot. So this turns into this. So it's only one illustration. And then I was able to make this with it. So I was really excited because it worked. It looked pretty good. It looked lively, and I only had to draw one character. And then I could just do whatever expression that I wanted, basically. So yeah, I was a little bit worried still, because this is a character that's young and doesn't have many lines in the face. But upon further testing, I found out that even like older characters or big nose characters or whatever, everything worked that I wanted to make. So I felt very free to do whatever I wanted character-wise. So it's a little bit laggy, I think. Anyway, you get the idea. So this is a small video of how it works in the game, controlled by the dialogue editor. Can you play the video? Yes, thank you.
My God, Ludlow, have you read this?
No, sir, I haven't.
Your people seem to be causing a lot of unrest in the colonies lately.
My people, sir?
Well, you know.
I don't know, sir.
The indigo farmers, they claim the trade does not benefit them enough. They accuse the Lord Protector of abuse of power and demand fairer wages. The local regent has yet to respond, but I fear he will cave in to the pressure.
Is that...
That's enough. So I will briefly go over how it works. There's a lot of ways to do this kind of 2D animation. If you've been to the Gwent talk, you saw how they did it. It's basically layers of a drawing that you project on a 3D mesh. I think that's how actually the first time when they made these kind of animations, that's how they did it. They projected layer drawings and then used 3D skeletons to animate everything. Nowadays, there's also a lot of very specific software packages like Spine that allow you to deform and move 2D planes and make it come alive. Disney does also really amazing stuff with 2D, 3D-esque things, but I have no idea how it works, but it's amazing. So the process of making a live 2D model involves first drawing the character. You then cut everything up into layers, obviously. What's important with this is that if you have paint strokes, that you make sure that where you cut doesn't, like it makes sense. And when you do it more often, you think about, okay, how is this going to move around the face? Is it going to make sense? Is it going to overlap other objects and stuff like that? Then you do the rigging. So it's basically, I kind of see it like how you also rig a 3D character. You have to do all the animations or how it can move, and then afterwards you do all the animations. So what it does, you have every different layer has its own mesh, and it's a 2D mesh. It looks like it could be 3D, but it's not. You can select basically every point in this mesh and deform it. And there's also, on top of that, you can place warp deformers, which kind of work like how you're used to in Photoshop, where you can move around an entire thing or large chunks of it, but you can also make smaller tweaks. But this is how you can go really intricate in, like the smaller the mesh is, the more, how do you say that? The more control you have over what you want to animate. So obviously stuff like eyes have much smaller meshes. So this is like a basic rotation deformer and a path deformer for stuff like hair, or it works well for eye lines, for eyebrows, stuff like that. So basically what you do is you have these parameters. It kind of works like keyframes, but not on a timeline. So for the face here, for example, you can see that every corner of the angle Y and X, I think, yes, you set the position of the face. So you set the position of the blank first layer of the face, but then also the placement of the eyebrows on that particular parameter, and also the nose, and every single piece of the face is set on that different corner of the parameter, so the transformation makes sense. Then you also work with hierarchies. So it's like parent-child relationships. You have the body, and under the body is the head. So if you move the body, the head comes with it, and under the head is stuff like eyes, eyebrows, stuff like that. So probably the most complicated and most nested objects are the eyebrows, because you have different positions, different angles, and different deformations. So you can see here that it's like you have all these different parameters that control a different aspect of the eyebrow, and together you can make very intricate different positions of the eyebrow. If it's a more complicated character, you can link basically whatever you want to that parameter. So here is the same parameters, but then not only the eyebrows move, but also the skin behind the eyebrow. So it moves along his head like it would. Yeah. So here's an example of skin lines and paint lines where I try to keep in between, so it doesn't look too weird moving around. I specifically take like the creases of the face, and then make sure the texture fits in between that and morph only between those lines. And if I want to move beyond them, I have to make sure that I also edit the cheeks to move along with those lines. Yeah, and I added like eyebrow creases and forehead creases, and you can just fade them in and then animate them in later. Yeah, especially for these models, because they're so detailed and painted, you really want to get that a little bit of that semi-realism in there. So I really try to add creases, a feeling of depth with like the nose movement, moving jaws, everything to make it look less like a static image and to make it come alive. Yeah, we use Unity for this. There's also different options, but Unity is the easiest. Basically, what you do, you have all these expressions, and then you have all the animations, and you can mix and match them. So we had a dialogue editor, and we can just select, okay, which expression do I want, with what animation. So you can create like almost every emotion that you want, because a sideways turn smiling is totally different than a sideways turn looking sad. So I could have chosen probably other animation software, but I really fell in love with this one. I wasn't an animator, so I didn't even consider animating my portraits at the start. But this gave me a lot of freedom to animate my own work, which was really exciting to me. Because it didn't limit me. With the other techniques, you are limited to 3D geometry, which is fine for maybe like more realistic. But if you want to go like really cartoony, you can probably get away with a lot more in Live 2D because you have complete control over how everything looks in every different angle. So you can cheat. It's also very detailed in the deformation possibilities. Like I showed, you can create very small meshes or very big ones, whatever you want. But you can just control basically how everything looks in different angles. And if you have enough space, you can do whatever you want. And for us, it was really, after some work with Live 2D itself, it was pretty easy to implement it in Unity, and they were very friendly helping us. The drawbacks of using it is that you really need 3 different disciplines to make it. You need to be able to draw, you need to model it, and you need to be able to animate it. So you can have different people for all those different tasks, but preferably you want somebody that can do all 3, which luckily I was able to do. Even if you're not the person drawing, if you're modeling, you need to be able to know anatomy so you can make deformations that make sense because you're simulating a 3D movement, basically. It has to make sense that every position looks realistic. As of now, it doesn't have any traditional animation bones yet, so probably it's less suitable for like full body sprites. Spine is probably more suited for that right now, but I've seen running animations with it. I haven't tried it myself yet. Another drawback, or I don't know if you can call it a drawback, but it takes time to make a character like this. If it's a very complex character, it can take a lot of time. Because I was the only one animating, I did I made sure that all the very important characters had much more range, and then the minor characters had less movement in their head. This is a game by Ubisoft. They made a mobile game using Live 2D. It was very successful, especially in the West. It's fairly uncommon to see these detailed drawings animated. But they've proven that they can make a very successful game, putting in the extra money to animate everything. We aren't exactly sure yet if I started first with Live 2D in Europe or they did it, but we had a discussion about that. But I still think it's me, but whatever. I'm still experimenting with Live 2D. I think as a graphic artist, I'm very excited by it. It brings so much extra to my work. It's just not only an illustration anymore. So honestly, I recommend every 2D artist to try it out because it's just magical to me. So this is very lame, but yay. I'd love to see more 2D art being animated. Even if it's like Gwent style or this style, whatever. I love seeing detailed illustrations animated. So if you want to see my portraits in action, the game that they're in is on Steam or GOG or whatever. You can check it out if you want. Any questions?